Greetings fellow simmer and welcome to the reaction review with me, GripperSim. Today we're going to investigate Microsoft's Feature Discovery Series Episode 3 on Aerodynamics and what I think as a pilot in the real world. Microsoft seem to be really piling it on with the aerodynamics this time and really giving it loads. I'm going to explain why this is good news if you're thinking of getting into Flight Simulator in 2020 when it comes out, and how Microsoft at the end of the day may help you obtain your private pilot's license. If you don't know already, Azobo Studios, or Azobo Studios, is a French studio and they have developed many titles in the past, including The Crew 2, which basically is a open world driving game which includes the map of the United States of America, of the whole country. Incredible. Also titles called Quantum Break, Fuel, and many other titles. Now, they say they have been years studying the Microsoft FSX code base, and I'm going to explain the 5 areas they have covered and changed in a great deal. I'm going to give you my opinion as a flight instructor and a pilot. I'll explain each of these in as simple terms as I can. So, improved core of the physics engine, rewriting of the aircraft systems, new aerodynamic simulation, new worldwide atmospheric air mass simulation, and the 3D environment versus air mass. What do they mean by the core of the physics engine? Well, they have a better collision environment, they say. Microsoft now supports sloped runways at last, and then they have rewritten the friction model of the aircraft, and the tyres are accurately simulated on the ground. This means if you land on tarmac or cement or grass, it'll behave as you would think in real life. They say if the tyres skid, they will behave exactly like they should, with realistic dynamic and static friction, according to, I would believe, if it's grass, asphalt or concrete. They even simulate the bumps on the ground and how the brakes are simulated. They also spoke about a new technology they have called adaptive frame rate, or adaptive time step, which apparently adjusts the frame rate according to your TV or monitor, and this means that the simulation will run smoother at a high frame rate even if your frame rate goes down. Now, this reminds me, and is very similar to what Pimax VR did. Their headsets were very performance heavy, and it was you just couldn't get your frame rate smooth, and what they did was they invented a technology called smart smoothing, and this basically what it did is it interpolated in between each frame if it couldn't compute it, in simple terms. Now, this improved the Pimax VR headsets by 30%, and it made a massive difference. They also stress that no more rails, the aircraft will not run on rails anymore, because they've redesigned it to make it more dynamic. The whole environment is simulated, the airflow of the air is simulated, the flow of the air over the wing is better simulated, stall spins, the inertia, the distribution of the aircraft, and the feel of the rotation, the roll, the pitch, the yaw, adverse aileron yaw, things like that will feel more natural, including spins and stalls and everything. So this is a first for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Rewriting the aircraft systems. Specifically, in the video they talk about the turn coordinator, the ball, or the slip and turn coordinator. It tells me that they're concentrating on things like adverse aileron yaw, asymmetric flight, and it tells me that they're pushing hard for a very realistic aerodynamic flight simulator. On some aircraft like the A2R, when you lower flaps, the nose pitches up like big time. You've really got to stuff that nose down, and they're simulating that as well a lot better. Also, when you raise the gear of an aircraft, if you take it up or take it down, that changes the whole centre of gravity of the aircraft, which means you'll have to retrim to compensate. Now, the real thing that impresses me big style with this video, I have to say above all others that really impresses me, is the icing. The icing looks absolutely fantastic. This shot here is in cloud, there's moisture, and you can see it slowly building up now. They've obviously sped up the video just to show you, and you can see the aircraft's descending with all the weight that the aircraft is now carrying due to the ice. And I can tell you, at this time of year, if I'm flying at -5 degrees and I see a shower, I'm out of there. I'm going back to the airfield, because the minute that rain hits that aircraft, it's going to turn to ice and it's going to get heavy and it's going to start falling out of the sky. So this is really good that Microsoft is paying attention to icing. And it also, with all this aerodynamic stuff, it shows me that when you're flying now with the dynamic weather in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 when it comes out, that there's much more of an element of risk than as there is in real life. You know, you got to think about what conditions you're flying in. It's going to be really good. Also, they have a number of consultants from the manufacturers, test pilots, giving them advice not only from the POH, which is called the Operating Handbook that comes with the aircraft with all the details, but there are some things in the Pilot's Operating Handbook, the POH, that doesn't really tell you how the aircraft rolls, for example, or what the roll rate is in certain conditions. So that's why they are, thankfully, getting a lot of consultants in from manufacturers and test pilots, etc., etc. So this is really good news. It's going to make the whole flight sim genre change for a very long time, I reckon. So the new aerodynamic simulation, this is pretty much kind of what we were talking about before. As you can see here, actually looks very familiar as to what you can do with X-Plane, but they have 1,000 points of reference with regards to the airflow over the wing and all the control surfaces of the aircraft, the tail. As you can see here, he's applying back and forth pressure in the control column, and you can see how much force that is applying on the tail. So they really are paying a lot of attention. Again, a first for Microsoft. I know other flight simulators have kind of done this thing already, so it's nothing really too new, except that Microsoft appear to be really taking it to the next level. Now, X-Plane have already said in their live feed that they are going to start improving things, okay? Now, they are the current leaders in physics in flight simulators. Now, that's due to Austin Meyer to the right. Now, Micheal Brown to the left is from a company called X-Force PC, and they build PCs specifically for X-Plane, and they're partnered with Laminar Research. I put a link to Micheal Brown's channel on the upper right hand corner at the end of this video. I suggest have a look at his channel because he does have brilliant interviews with Austin Myers and the development of X-Plane. Now I think there'll be an announcement in the coming months with regards to X-Plane. They're going to increase their production value of their flight simulator, I would imagine. Now on the right, Austin Meyer, about him, he really knows his physics, and he's the guy who puts hands on keyboard and codes X-Plane, and he knows a vast amount, more so than most, about aircraft and aviation physics. He's even involved in electric VTOL, but he doesn't talk about that much. It's probably some sort of a secret. Let's have a look.
L times delta x, the distance equals the moment. The equation is V equals VR times the square root of H over HR. Because the propeller pulls the air in, there's a suction that accelerates it halfway, boom, pressurizes it with that blade. That blade pressurizes the crap out of the air, and then what does that pressure do back behind you? Boom, pushes back to accelerate. Ground effect for helicopters goes away as you speed up. And this is a reason that helicopters kind of settle a little bit before ETL comes in, or effective translational lift, and then they pick up again. The rotor down to the ground is equal to the height of the rotor disc divided by the speed of the rotor wake. I mean, this is high school algebra. Time equals distance divided by velocity per element thermals. If a wingtip catches a thermal, the glider goes woo and banks away from the thermal, right? The wing catches that thermal and it lifts up. And so starting with 1140 beta 3, all the elements on the wing, each one looks to see if it's in a thermal or not, or how much it is. And so it'll roll away from the thermals if the wing catches one.
Will the physics of Microsoft Flight Simulator be as good as X-Plane? Well, who knows? X-Plane certainly have the advantage with the knowledge they have and use all the time for physics. In any case, you saw the clip earlier on of Courchevel. This is X-Plane Courchevel here as it stands at the moment. Now, who knows? Will they partner with Google Earth for satellite imagery, etc., etc.? I have no idea. But let's have a look at this video and see what you think, and you can see the difference between Microsoft Courchevel and X-Plane's Courchevel. I know they don't have a patch on the graphics that Microsoft have. I put a link to this video in the description below, and I'll also put it up here in the upper right hand corner. You can see that explanation mark up in the upper right hand side of your corner. This is just a video I made. I was fooling around landing aircraft that is far too big for Courchevel, and it is a very dangerous airport, so we'll have a bit of fun. But the reason I'm showing you this X-Plane stuff is this is good for all of us, because they're both going to start competing and innovating, and this means at the end of the day, all us flight sims are going to get 2 great flight sims in 2020.
And we've got some stuff lined up for the next year we're not going to tell you about yet. This is when the engines are really revving at the beginning of what's going to be an epic drag race. And there's no question both drag races are going to come screaming across that line.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Now, there it is. Its own. So back to Microsoft Flight Simulator now. Now this clip, when they show this really caught my eye, and I'll tell you why. When I first spun an aircraft, this is what I saw. This terrified me. I'll never forget it. Now, you do get used to spinning after a while. I mean, when I did my instructor's rating, we spun all the time. So this to me looks incredibly accurate, and it makes me very, very pleased to see that Microsoft are really giving it loads with regards to their aerodynamics. I can see here that the spin doesn't develop until 1 or 2 rotations, which is very realistic. The new worldwide air mass simulation. So they're simulating our atmosphere, which means, yes, we will get storms, we will get towering cumulonimbus clouds, we will get CB clouds. There will be updrafts in those clouds and there'll be downdrafts, meaning if you fly an aircraft into a mature cumulonimbus cloud, you're going to get thrown around like quite a bit. In real life, it could be quite severe. It'd break up your aircraft, you'll be up and down, there's nothing you can do about it. So all of the atmosphere is going to be simulated, and this is going to be absolutely fantastic. Someone asked me in the comments, will there be storms? Will there be supercells, etc.? Yes, there will. Will there be fronts? They haven't really talked about that, but I imagine they will because it's all simulated. So cold fronts, warm fronts, and all the atmospheric treats that we will get for our flight simulator. And you can fly into storms and cause all sorts of havoc for yourself. 3D environment versus the air mass. Now, what they've done here is they have simulated the winds, but also when the wind blows over cities or towns or hills or trees or anything like that, you get turbulence. It's called surface friction. So, for example, when I'm flying, I fly in Wicklow in Ireland. So there are large mountains. Well, they're not mountains, they're more hills. They're like 3,000 feet just to the west of our airfield. So when the wind is coming from the west, I expect it to be very, very bumpy. And actually, it's quite bumpy. At only 15 knots, 15, 20 knots, there'll be no flying. That's how bumpy it is. So when we're flying, we will fly above the friction layer. Some days we'll get above it at about 3,000 feet and it just becomes smooth then. So what they're saying here is they have included the interaction between the air mass and the ground, which is huge. So I'm expecting when I'm eventually flying Microsoft 2020 in Newcastle, where I fly from, I will take off, and if there's a 50-knot wind coming from the mountains, I expect to feel pretty much the same turbulence as I would in the real aircraft, and also fly over my house, which apparently you'll be able to do, which is pretty damn good. Now, in the beginning of the video I mentioned, how can Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 help you obtain your private pilot's license or help you train for it? Well, this is actually nothing new. For example, I know of a simulation, and it's a Redbird simulator. They have them in America, and they're certified for the school to train students in the simulator for part of their private pilot's license and their commercial flying. Now, that's P3D version 1 in a lot of them. Version 1 of P3D. So this is nothing new. That's just P3D. There's X-Plane and Microsoft and all the other guys have these simulators. Now, they are certified effectively for the school to use that simulation. Now, I don't think it's going to take a lot from what Microsoft are saying to have it certified, because they really are taking the aerodynamics beyond what is required for a flight simulator. So this is good news. For example, for me, when I'm talking to a student, I can tell him, after training him to do stalls, I can get him to do it at home in his flight simulator, and he can practice the procedures and see how the aircraft represents the real thing. So yes, it actually can very much help you with your actual private pilot's license and your commercial flying for that matter. So I hope this video finds you well. Thanks a million for watching. Do comment. I know there's an awful lot of people heated with X-Plane and Microsoft, and X-Plane will go away and vice versa and all this kind of stuff. Well, I'm just giving you my opinion, which is just an opinion, and you guys have your opinion, and that's all great. And do give me your opinions and your thoughts in the comments. So thank you very much. I hope this video finds you well. And if you do like flight simming or thinking of getting into flight simming, subscribe, like, and when Microsoft 2020 comes out, guess who'll be making lots of footage for 2020? Yes, it'll be Gripper Sim. Yep, I'll be busy bee.